All right. Hello, everyone. I am Jennifer Joseph, Mississippi State Extension Agent here in Hancock County. Thank you so much for joining me for today's Q&A series. And today's topic is growing your own food. And I am accompanied by my colleague, Dr. Christian Stevenson. Welcome, Dr. Stevenson.
It is absolutely a pleasure to be here, and I hope to get some really great questions from all the people interested in home vegetable production.
Hopefully, we get some questions in. Before they do start coming in, I'll start with our list of questions that we already have. And the first question is, why should we grow our own food?
Well, I think there are several reasons why it's a really good idea to get engaged in gardening of any sort, and in vegetable gardening and in fruit tree production and all of that sort of home food production. The first thing that I always tell people in terms of talking about home vegetable gardening is the things that you grow at home, the produce that you take right out of your back garden is going to be just a world different than what you're going to be able to purchase at the grocery store. And the example that I always give about that is tomatoes. Now, my doctoral research was a lot of growing tomatoes, and up until I grew my own tomatoes, I didn't like tomatoes. I got I got the standard response. I thought they tasted like cardboard, and I just really didn't enjoy them. The second I took a tomato off a plant in my own back garden and took it right inside my kitchen, it was just like the sun came out from behind a cloud. It's just fantastic. The other side of that, is nutrition is important too, and making sure that we eat the right amount of fruits and vegetables. I'm not a nutritionist, but I know one, and the things we grow, we're going to eat. I find when I have a really good productive vegetable garden, I'm making use of those vegetables, and I'm really excited about having those in my diet. And so that's just a really great addition to that. And the most nutritious fruit or vegetable is going to be is when you take it off the plant. So it's really going to have a lot of nutritional benefits to having that production right there in your backyard or your front yard. And beyond that, the past 2 years, life can get stressful, and the past 2 years can get particularly stressful. And it is just it's a fantastic calming activity. It's something that really helps just kind of slow things down just a little bit, and you can enjoy that experience of being out there gardening. Added to that, we all need to get a little bit more exercise, or at least most of us do. And gardening is a moderate form, low impact exercise, and it's one that people tend to stick with. So I've seen people, we start trying to walk or trying to run, God forbid, or ride bikes and things like that, and people tend to do it for a certain amount of time. Gardening is an activity people stick with, and so there are just a lot of health benefits that go along with growing some of your own food.
I agree. Thank you so much. And definitely for touching on that nutrition aspect. It doesn't get any better than picking it from your yard. The fresher, the better. You don't have to worry about it sitting on a shelf and or sitting in the freezer section and just deteriorating, losing all of its nutritional value, just picking it straight off the plant. And it tastes, like you said, it's so much better. It's like, I love the sunshine. That's exactly how it is. Okay, so next, what fruit or vegetables should we grow in particular, especially for our, I won't even just limit it to Mississippi. What fruit and vegetables?
So the first thing that I tell people when they ask me what do I want to start to grow when I'm going to start a new garden. The first thing I say is whatever you want. So that you can grow. We're really fortunate here in Mississippi that in our climate, at some time of year, you can grow a wide range of different foods. We can grow tomatoes and peppers and eggplants and squash and cucumbers. Really far down here in in coastal Mississippi, we can have citrus trees, just all sorts of opportunities. If we're trying to narrow it down, if we just have a limited space and there's only so much we're going to be able to grow, the thing that I'll tell people to do is grow what you eat. And, so if you know that, in the foods that you like to consume, you're going to have a lot of tomatoes, then tomatoes are going to be a really great product for you. If you eat a lot of squash, then that's going to be a really great product for you. The other thing that I tell people to do is, look at what you're buying at the grocery store when you go, and take a little trip around the produce section and think a little bit about the cost of what you're buying on a regular basis. So, using tomatoes as one example, tomatoes tend to be relatively inexpensive, so long as you're just purchasing the sort of regular tomato that you would get at the grocery store. Um, so if you compare that with something like a bell pepper, bell peppers can be fairly expensive, particularly if you're looking at like the red bell peppers or purple bell peppers. Those colorful varieties tend to be a little bit more expensive, and so you're saving a little bit more money growing them at home than you might with some of the lower cost items that you could produce. Um, to make on the other side, of course, I always tell people to grow tomatoes because it's just a fantastic experience. And those tomatoes that you grow at home are just worlds different again. But the two really important things, first of all, again, grow what you're going to eat, grow what you'll use in your kitchen. And again, look at the cost of those different items if you just have a limited space, and go for the high value items when you're looking at what you're going to include in your garden.
Okay, awesome. Awesome. And that point about the bell peppers, my goodness. Every time they're in season, I need to be growing them because they are such a foundation of my diet. Like so many recipes call for bell peppers and they're only like 170 something each. So one recipe needing two bell peppers and then you're having multiple recipes throughout the week that needs those bell peppers. I could save so much money if I just had one plant at home.
Oh, and plants, just a single plant or a few plants can be extraordinarily productive. So, it's not a situation where you grow one plant and you get one bell pepper. You can get several, a good number of peppers off of that one plant that you're growing. And I think I had 10 bell pepper plants this past year. And I eat a lot of bell peppers, and I got to a point where I was giving them away because I was producing more than we were able to use. So it's a small garden. Even if you can just have two or three plants, it really can have a lot of impact on what you're able to bring into your kitchen.
Right, right. Agreed. Okay, we have a question here from Lily Wash. If you grow them and freeze them, how long will they last in sealed bags?
So that is a very good question, and that is honestly it's more of a nutrition
Nutrition
question
question.
than a sort of food science question than a gardening question. Um, so
But
I can't give a quick and easy answer to that. It's not the topic. I know that I've kept frozen bell peppers and used them after as long as a year, and they were just fine. That's my personal experience, but I don't want to give an answer when that's not the principal area where I would consider myself an expert. Jennifer, you may actually have more comment on that than I do.
Right. So when it comes to freezing, what you're really concerned about is the quality of the food being maintained. And the longer it's in the freezer, the more the quality is going to diminish in your fruit or your vegetable. However, you also have to think about the nutritional component. Will it also degrade nutritionally? And that's true as well. And we have a publication here that Miss Ellen has thankfully posted here in our comment section, and it has recipes for different fruit and different vegetables. But as Christian stated, you can keep them for a very long time, but the recommended period is around 4 to 6 months. Some publications that I've read, even 2 to 3 months, you'll see a difference in your fruit and your vegetables. So it just depends on the quality and how you freeze them. How you freeze them is everything. And you're more than welcome, Miss Wash. All right. So are container garden more cost effective or most
Well,
cost efficient?
okay, now that is a really good question, and I am a huge proponent of growing vegetables in containers for a range of reasons. And to when we look at cost effectiveness of a particular garden practice, we need to think about that in sort of consideration of all of the different things that we're doing. So we want to consider what the startup cost for going into starting a container garden versus starting an in-ground garden. I like to consider labor as part of that. I put a dollar amount on what labor costs, because unfortunately my time isn't free, or at least not as much of my time as I would like would be free. And so I kind of consider that as well, and then considering how productive that garden is going to be. In my experience, if you're going to have a relatively small garden, if you're just if you're going to have 20 plants or something like that, then certainly I think containers are the best way to go there. I think in terms of productivity and in terms of the time that you're going to be able to put into that, and the labor that's necessary for dealing with the soil that you have, I think you're going to be better off going with a container garden, or some small raised beds, which are essentially containers if you think about it. If you're going to have a much larger garden, if you're getting up into a couple of hundred square feet, that's where we start having to look at the cost, if you need a tiller and things like that. So really large garden, probably going to be better in the ground in terms of just the costs. If you have a relatively small garden, I think you're going to do better in containers.
Great. Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for your questions. Okay, so we have one more question from Miss Wash. With all of the rain, my garden didn't do well at all. Are there any suggestions?
Well, that can be difficult, and this year has certainly been a rainy one. And rain, excessive moist, excessive water can certainly do a number on our plants, just in inundating the soil, causing some environmental stress problems on plants. I've seen quite a lot of fungal and bacterial issues showing up in gardens, because having free water or water that's on the leaves of the plant can make those problems significantly more common. And so it certainly can be an issue, and to some extent, I'll tell people that gardening is gambling. That there's always going to be a time when we have plants that don't do as well as we would like them to, and we roll with that, and we just keep on going. The best thing we can do, of course, we don't want to add any supplemental water when we don't need to, in a situation like this. So, I drive home every day, and despite all the rain, I still see all of the lawn irrigation starting up. at the end of the day. So that's certainly not the best option there. Um, but fundamentally, if we can make sure that the plants have really good soil, if we have a high organic matter in that soil, so we don't have heavy clay or too sandy a soil, adding organic matter can be helpful there. Um, and a really, certainly a really good thing. Make sure that you're paying attention to your fertilization. Make sure your pH is good. Make sure that the plants have the fertilization they need. The healthier, plants are just like us. The healthier they are, the more able they are going to be able to overcome some of these other issues. So if we can take care of that, we can try to have the best drainage we can in our soils, and do our best. Now, if we're in a container, then we can add drainage if we need to. We can make sure that we're providing enough drainage to let that soil dry out if it ever has the opportunity. So,
Okay. And I'm sorry.
now I was just going to see one more question about what is a fool's proof plant. That's always a dangerous question because every time I answer that, I underestimate the ingenuity of fools. uh, if you just want a plant that you're not gonna that's gonna be really easy to deal with. Now we're primarily talking about vegetables. Um, Maybe okra is one that really tends to behave itself and have fairly limited issues. We've had some real success growing that. Eggplant does really well and is very productive. My favorites are peppers. I love growing peppers. I don't know if I would consider them foolproof, but they tend to be a little bit more tolerant of some issues than you might see with something like a squash or a tomato. Um, if getting outside the range of vegetables or food plants, there is a lot to be said for succulents in containers as being a really sort of easy approach to gardening. Aloe is a great starter plant. When somebody comes into the office and tells me that they have a brown thumb and they can't grow anything, I've got a stock of aloe plants that I give them one and say, here, just put it outside and forget you have it, and that can do really well. Kind of in the same range is rosemary. Now that would be a culinary herb, and I think herbs are a good range for plants where you
Mhm.
don't have to put a lot of work into them. They grow really easily. So that would be another really good option for someone who's maybe had some maybe wants to get started with something that doesn't take a great deal of care.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, Miss Gowdy, for your question. Okay, so next, what grows well in Mississippi?
So we're I've already mentioned this a little bit. We're really fortunate here that our climate will allow us to really grow a fantastic range of plants. Um, we can think about all of the spring vegetables or that we enjoy. So all of the solanaceous plants, the tomatoes and the peppers and the eggplants, the squashes or the cucurbits, so cucumbers and zucchini and squash do extraordinarily well here. Also, we can grow some really great corn and enjoy that. Something that takes a little bit more space often,
Mhm.
but does very well here. And we also do fantastic if we get into the sort of the cool season crops. We grow some great broccoli and collards and kale and other greens. There's almost nothing that I can say that you can't grow here in Mississippi. So the possibilities are really wide open. Certainly, there are some plants that are a little bit more troublesome than others. I haven't had the best experience in the world trying to grow Brussels sprouts here because we do have a fairly short winter, and they really like that colder period of time. But That being said, I've seen some great successes with that too. So, depending on where you are in Mississippi, I think the sky is the limit, and really just about anything that you'd like to grow, in terms of vegetables and herbs and things like that, are definitely possibilities here.
Definitely. I didn't even know, y'all, I didn't even know you could grow broccoli here until Christian brought tubs filled with broccoli to the office for, I guess, experiment or research purposes that he was conducting, and it was in Beaumont. And if you know where Beaumont, Mississippi is, then you're probably just like me. What? Seriously? I was just completely blown away, but literally broccoli. And it was absolutely beautiful and delicious, to say the least. So it's
That,
possible.
that reminds me, I still have some in the freezer, and I need to make broccoli and cheese soup here in the next couple of days.
It's a little warm, but have your way. Okay, so now next we have, where do I get the plants?
Okay, well, you have a couple of options when you look at where to get plants. And sort of the easiest way to go and start, get plant starts for your vegetable garden is to go to your local garden center, even your local big box store, and they will have very often a display of vegetable plants out there at the start, particularly in the spring. Though I've seen some of them kind of get a little bit more involved with some of those same plants in the fall. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with going and buying transplants from a store. I'm always going to recommend going to one of your local garden centers. We have just throughout Mississippi, everywhere I've been, we always have some really great garden centers that are really dedicated to making sure that they're providing a really good plant product to their customers. So, go out, find your garden store, look at all the different varieties they have, and pick the ones that are right for your garden. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. My preference personally is to start my own plants from seed. And it's one of the simplest things that you can do. You can purchase seed much more cheaply than you would be able to buy a transplant. Individual transplant may cost you around $1, which certainly isn't a lot. But if I spend $10 on transplants, I can get 10 plants. If I spend $10 on seed, I can get much, much more than that. Sorry about that. So, if you can start about 4 to 6 weeks before the season, start some seed. You'll want to look. There's the Garden Tabloid, which is a really great publication. Gives you some ideas about when you would be looking at planting times for the area of Mississippi that you're in. And you can look at sort of what the germination time is to get those going. Usually 4 to 6 weeks, depending on the type of plant that you're growing. You start those. You can purchase little pots or flats to have to start seed in. But I have started seed in just about anything that will hold soil and let some water in there. It's really easy to do. And I think there's a lot of satisfaction that comes along with that too. The other thing that I really like about starting my own seed is that I like to get a little wacky with the varieties that I grow. So, every year in my garden, I'm going to have the sort of standby varieties that I know perform fantastic for me. I know I'm going to get that tomato off of it, and I know it's going to be what I'm looking for. And then I'm going to find the strangest variety that I can possibly find. I'm going to find something that I've never grown before. And that just adds a little bit of variety and enjoyment to what I'm doing. And you never know, sometimes when you're doing that, you find a variety that's just something that you're absolutely going to love and want to stick with. So that's how you do it. Again, but however, I'll tell people, I've gotten lots of questions about different ways to approach gardening. And I'll always tell people, there's, as long as you garden, you're doing it right. So there's not a wrong way. So however you get your plants, both answers are correct.
Okay, thank you. Oh, it really takes the pressure off. Okay, so you mentioned seasons. So it matters when you're growing your plants.
Sure.
Yeah. So, and the reason why I say that, you'll have some who wait until, they're in the middle of the summer before they'll try to plant some items that they should have planted in the springtime. And they wonder why they're not really prospering the way they are yielding the produce that they would like to yield. So, yeah.
Sure. So I've gotten several questions about that, over the past couple of weeks, and the particularly, I have tomatoes, and I've got all sorts of flowers on my tomatoes, but I'm not getting any. I'm not getting any fruit, or all the flowers dropped off my plant. We're getting into the middle of July, and it's really hot, and the plants have all of that stress on the. In the case of some plants, the pollen isn't able to survive when the temperatures are really high. So it is important, again, use those resources through the extension service. Talk to your county agent, and make sure that you know when the right planting dates are. And keep in mind that I'm in Hancock County, Mississippi. That's as far south in Mississippi as we can get. So the planting date here in Hancock County is going to be pretty different from the planting date in Tishomingo or Tunica County, because we do have, we've got a few weeks difference in terms of what that right planting date is going to be.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for
Going a little further on that, with choosing the right season for the plants you're growing. We talked about broccoli and the sort of brassicas, or growing cabbage and things like that. If they get exposed to warmer temperatures, they can bolt or send up a flower stalk because they think that spring has come again. So we always want to make sure that we're paying attention to those planting dates.
Definitely don't want it to think it's spring when we're really trying to yield some greens.
Well, and but one of the great things about Mississippi is that we're going to get a second chance. We can, I'm going to be planting my tomatoes again on the 15th of August, and be able to get a crop in before the end of the year. So, we have if the spring didn't work out for you, we've got the second attempt coming up really quickly.
It's good to know. Good to know. Okay, we have another question here by Miss Karen. Trying to control, I'm not sure what that is, TT swamp. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Sure. And I'm going to have to ask you several questions to sort of know what we're trying to do and where we're trying to do it. One of the very important things about controlling any plant is figuring out where it is. And where, what it's around, and what I would really recommend, particularly with issues like weed control, is contact your county agent. Make sure you let them know what else is growing around that plant, what you're going to want to keep in that area, because I don't want to tell you something that you can use to control it, not knowing what other plants may be around, or where it's growing, or the particular conditions in your landscape. So really recommend that you contact your county agent for that.
Awesome. Thank you. And as you can see, Miss Ellen has been keeping us up with all the different publications that Extension has to offer. If you didn't know that, our Extension page, which is, it's, Ellen, can you put up what the actual address is for our Extension page? Once you go there, we have a publication section where you can search per topic and per subject, and you'll have a list of publications to come up. And those are free. completely accessible. So thank you so much for keeping us up to date with those publications, Ellen. And everyone, take advantage of those because, again, they're free. And if you know someone who has questions, hey, direct them straight to our extension page. Okay, so we're almost there, wrapping it up. We have one more question. How do we get local produce
Okay,
if
so
we're not
well,
going to grow it ourselves?
okay, well, if you're not going to grow a garden yourself, and I understand, time commitment or the physical labor of that sometimes can be a little bit of a challenge. I would really advocate for going to your local farmers markets, going to areas that are farm stands in your local area. There are a number of opportunities for things like U-Picks where you might um, be able to go to a large garden where they're growing all sorts of different things, and be able to go and pick it and pay by the amount, or the amount that you pick. Sometimes it's by the bucket, sometimes they do it different ways, and all those things you're going to have all a lot of the great benefits of having locally grown produce, in terms of the great taste that you're going to get, in terms of the nutrition that you're going to get. That benefit is going to be there for you. And of course, the other side of that is by going to your local farmers markets, by buying those local foods. You're supporting the farmers here in Mississippi and the growers here in Mississippi. You're keeping that money right in your community, which is going to benefit not only you in your kitchen, but it's going to benefit the entire community. It benefits all of us to keep our food local. There's a lot of environmental benefits that go along with that as well. So it's something you can really feel good about when you go and spend your money with one of our local producers. So I always encourage people to do that. Even if you have your own garden, I still think it's a really good idea to get out there, because they might be growing something that you're not, and you can find all sorts of really great things when you go to the farmers markets.
I agree. Thank you so much. And it's so important that we are keeping that money local, and you're helping your neighbor. You're helping that farmer. Okay. It looks as though trying to eradicate roots to keep from spreading.
I think that's still a question about the swamp sorilla,
Yeah, it is.
and what I would encourage you to do, ma'am. There's a I just don't want to make it's a tree, and do I'd have to ask you a few questions. If we got time to do that here, I'm happy to do that. What do you have growing around that area? Are we trying to completely remove the plant? Are you just trying to cut it back to be a little bit smaller? I need to know a little bit more about what's going on with the situation to be able to answer your question.
Okay. Well, as we wait for her to respond, if she does respond, do you have any other information that you would like for our viewers to know, Christian?
Okay, so there is, of course, there's a lot of really great resources through MSU Extension to get started gardening and get started with vegetable gardening. The first thing that I would tell everybody to do, and you've probably heard me say something along this lines already, is find your local county agent. Make sure that you know them by name, and we are here just to answer your questions, and it does not cost you anything to give us a call, ask us every single question. We're happy to come out. One of the best things I get to do as an extension agent is go out to somebody's property and help them with their garden or with their landscape and answer their questions. So I and every other extension agent in the state are going to be thrilled to be able to help you. So make sure you're using that resource because we're here to benefit you. Um, Again, there are a lot of resources online. Always encourage you to make use of those. There's some great social media resources that have come out. So I hope you're on the MSU Extension Horticulture Hub, and that's a really good resource, and will get you in touch with some of the great stuff that's coming out with Southern gardening. Gary Bachman has been putting out, some really interesting and really good horticulture and vegetable stuff. He's done some stuff and showed off his tomato plants. I am absolutely jealous of what he's got going on. So really encourage you to get engaged with that because it's an absolutely great resource for you. And you'll see announcements for all sorts of really good programs. I have been fortunate to be able to do quite a lot of different online horticulture programs over the past year, and certainly encourage people to I've recorded all of them. Please, by all means, go and access those,
Mhm.
um, and keep an eye out for other things. But really, the best thing that I can tell you to do to really improve your success is make sure that you know your county agent, and you make use of the resource that's there for you.
Awesome. I couldn't agree more. As I always tell you all, we're here and we're free service. So take advantage of it. Thank you all so much for joining us for today's Q&A series. I look forward to seeing you all next month. Hopefully you will be able to join me. And that's all for today. Hail State and go dogs.
It's been a pleasure to be here today.